It's 9 o'clock. And do you know where your children are? The pedophiles, they know where they are. If they don't know where they are right now, they will find them. And there's only one line of defense. It has good men like Tim Ballard and others like him. So let's get this discussion started. This is a Christ-centered channel. We talk of Christ. We rejoice in Christ. We preach of Christ. And we are not afraid of the hard subjects, but we engage with love. We welcome those who are watching at this time. We hope that you will comment on this video and hit that like button. Please subscribe to this channel and share this video with your friends and family. May we edify and uplift one another. Now let's get this video started. Again, many accusations against Tim have been exhaustedly abused to make gain for the channels that are promoting these allegations against him. So many are forgetting about the children that Tim has saved over the women that volunteered to help Tim in his efforts to find the pedophiles who have abducted children for their own pleasure and for the pleasure of thousands and thousands and millions of predators that lurk about. 7 women are traumatized, and you guys are focused on that over the millions of children that are traumatized moment by moment by their captors. Let's get this real, buddy. Who are you to make a moral judgment on Tim Ballard and his efforts to fight a war, a real war, against pedophiles and predators? Can we really stand on the sidelines and look in depth into the vileness of the world of the pedophile and the predator and lose focus on the children that they're abusing? Because Tim Ballard is the news of the day, because it is alleged that he abused his power over the women that he employed to help his organization. You got Cardinellis, who's making comments that undermine his efforts suggestively. Glenn Beck, another one, suggesting that the women that he interviewed or were interviewed, and Greg from Seawick, well, these women are credible. I remind these people and many others that would take the word of a woman who, or women who have not shown themselves in public and demanded justice. They've hidden themselves behind those who are staples in media. and lawyers. Let me remind people like Glenn Beck, Cardinellis, and Greg of Seawick, and many others like them. These women were capable actresses, more than capable. They are going into a very stressful situation in these operations. And they were able to be so convincing to the predators that they were in some way attached to the man that they were with, that the predators were willing to give up their or let down their guard so that they could be caught by men like Tim Ballard. So when Glenn Beck and Greg or anybody else talks about the credibility of these women, they are so removed from reality, I say. These women were under duress in places like brothels and strip clubs and other places where they had to play a role so convincing that a villain would allow them their guard to be lowered. So when they do these interviews, is it possible that these women were so convincing, but only convincing because of their great skill as an actress? Think about it that way. So, I wanted to kind of go into the idea that Russell Ballard name was used by Tim Ballard in some way to promote his organization. Okay. My views on my channel are usually like 45, 70. I might get 300, something like that. But because I decided to talk about Tim Ballard and the ongoing scandal that is being promoted by so many media ideologues, that my last video is up to 4,500 views. I went from 70 views or 45 views on my last video before the Tim Ballard story to 4,500. So am I using Tim Ballard's name to promote to get some credibility, to promote my channel? Or is it just a reciprocal in its effect? When we have association with organizations or with individuals of that organization, it is always going to be on the minds of those who would contribute to Tim Ballard's efforts, that he has associations with many people, including those of the church, whether it be just the fact that he's a member of the church and there's men like Russell M. Nelson and Russell Ballard and President Oaks and President Eyring and many other great men and the apostles and prophet in their position. It is natural that he would get notoriety because the church is intolerant of pedophilia. Have we made mistakes? Has the church made mistakes trying to deal with some very difficult things? Of course they have. But again, to say that Tim Ballard has somehow used the name of M. Russell Ballard as a way to promote his operation, or the church itself, or what the women accused him of, is using God in such a way to manipulate them into situations that eventually they felt were so uncomfortable that years later that they have come out and said, Tim was inappropriate with me. These women that volunteered knew exactly who Tim was and knew the power that he had of persuasion. He's gone into multiple operations, being able to convince the most hideous villains of our society. So he has a very powerful presence. And in his work, he has to promote a very confident idea in the minds of those who would be a part of his organization, because he cannot lose that edge which carries his work forward in the field. Again, I remind my audience, it is a war full of filth and vile. There is going to be those who have volunteered for the work who are going to be traumatized by the situation. That is not a doubt. Tim Ballard himself has talked about the trauma that is so overwhelming to him, and the work he had to do while with the government and outside of the government, and how it burns into his mind all the vile photos that he had to view. It traumatizes him. What do you think women who are not capable are how they're going to be affected? They're going to feel traumatized by the slightest hint of improprieties. Do I deny that there might have been some inappropriate act by Tim on these women? No. But again, given the situation that it is a war where villains and thugs exist, our morals change in those situations. And sometimes we cannot separate those situations that are part of the war with a situation that compel us to act in an immoral way. I don't know what Tim has done to deserve this and the accusations that have been levied against him, but I know what he has done to deserve every ounce of support from every person on this earth that cares about children. We cannot separate Tim Ballard from his heroic acts and separate them from or separate them in a way that disconnects because, oh, Tim Ballard was inappropriate with 7 women. We completely forgot the kind of heroic acts that he was engaged in. I don't see how anybody could choose these 7 women over the millions of children that are affected by pedophiles and predators. And there's only one person out there, or there's only men like Tim Ballard that are capable of saving these children. Out of everybody that is picking on Tim Ballard or making accusations or distrusting his loyalty to the church or whatever, I got a question for you. When are you going to step in to action and take over when Tim is not there anymore? If you're not willing to step in and take over when Tim is not there anymore to save the children that need to be rescued, then how can you stand yourself to look yourself in the mirror being critical of somebody as men like Tim Ballard? I couldn't do it. Like I told you, Tim Ballard could have been inappropriate, whatever that means, with these women. The work he's done to save children overwhelms his supposed inappropriateness with these women by leaps and bounds. There should be not even a discussion. Oh, he was inappropriate with women that worked with him. That they said that he manipulated using God. That should be the farthest thing from our mind. If Tim needs to be healed, then let's help him heal. If he's been inappropriate and been out of line with his covenants he made with his wife and his God, let's help him. Let's not talk about the sin. Let's talk about the good man Tim is and find a way to help him through any problem that he might have. If it comes out that Tim is finally admits to whatever accusation, let's say it happens, all right? Would he lose my support as a man worthy of all the support that I have for the battle he's in? Absolutely not. I would never remove my support for him as a human being and as a warrior. The man has a lot of good to do, and he can do it best by being supported by those who can make an impact on the lives of so many children. Let me ask you a question, especially to the female, all right? Because this probably hurts more than anything. I mean, who wants to be victimized? All right? Who wants to be victimized? Nobody wants to be victimized, all right? I get it. I feel bad for I feel the worst especially when the females are victimized, okay? It's just the worst thing, okay? I understand that. All right? So you're a mother, you have daughters. A predator, armed predators come into your house and they say, It's either the mother or the children or the daughters. Let's do that again. How many of you mothers out there and husbands who have young daughters, and there's predators and pedophiles that enter into your home and they demand, whether it be the mother or their daughters, will be victimized? What mother would choose their children to be victimized first and not put their life on the line for them? These women that were engaged in this work obviously had no attachment to these children that they were saving. Because if they had a real attachment like Tim Ballard has to these children, they would more than be willing to give all that they had to save the children. Look how many teachers who have stood in front of their children in the classrooms while the murderous thug shot randomly, and the teachers stood in front until they were murdered, trying to protect as many children as they could. I think we've lost focus on the whole situation. Let's get it back to where it needs to be. There are villains out there that are willing to do anything and everything they can to victimize young children. And there's only one line of defense, and that is good men like Tim Ballard to come to their rescue. If Tim Ballard is gone, then which one of you who are willing to put shame and blame on Tim Ballard for his inappropriate acts with these women, which one of you is going to step into his place and go out and rescue these children in the most effective way as Tim has? I wonder, is there anybody? Greg from Seawick, Cardinellis, Glenn Beck? You've donated money maybe for your time, or maybe you just made things aware, promoting Tim Ballard while the Sound of Freedom was a hot topic and his heroic acts. But just soon as a news article drops to make Tim the villain, you're willing to make Tim the villain, not the predators, not the pedophile, but Tim. I wouldn't be able to stand to look at myself if I took that position after I supported him. And anybody that thinks otherwise, well, that ain't me. It never will be. So again, I've had lots of comments, and I really wanted to read a few of them just because I hope they don't get offended for me to read them, but they're public. But I think they're important to know that, and to let Tim know that he's being supported by some people out there that care about the children first. All right, care about the children first. This is what we're talking about. Again, these women obviously had a disconnect between their children and themselves that they were saving. Because, again, a teacher who has taught their children for months and months and months have been willing to stand in between them, their children, and the murderous thug to do all they could to save their lives. What mother would not give themselves first to the predator or the pedophile first before she handed her daughters off to somebody so vile? You need to take a hard look at that situation, right? Because these women, obviously, I don't know if they got paid by Tim Ballard and his organization. I think they are compensated. And maybe they looked at the money first. And maybe the lure of an attraction of being a rescuer of children first, and being something, a part of a higher calling first. It was all about them as an individual and what they were going to get out of it. But they had no attachment, in my mind, to the children they were rescuing. Because if they had any attachment to those children they were rescuing, they would not have said anything about Tim in a negative light. They knew they were in a war. If they did not, they didn't know that they were in a war. I don't know, then they weren't smart enough to be there, but they were smart. They were good enough actresses to convince the villains, the predators and the pedophiles, that they were legitimate. Again, it goes back to that idea. These women, they're actresses. They go before Greg of Seawick, Glenn Beck, and they tell their story. If they can be so convincing in the most stressful situation, where any slight hint of acting a part would ruin the operation and possibly get them all killed and murdered, then how easy would it be for them to go to a reporter, a person like Glenn Beck or Greg of Seawick, or anybody else, and tell a pitiful story of abuse by Tim Ballard, where they had no one threatening their lives, but it was a safe space where they could act out however and most comfortably as they wanted to be. You think about it that way. If they can convince the pedophiles and the predators in those situations, then how easy would it be to convince people like Glenn Beck and Greg from Seawick? Ask yourself that. Tim Ballard is smarter than most of us, all right? And I'm not telling you anything he wouldn't know already. I only know Tim Ballard because I watched interviews, and I haven't even read his books because they're probably too long for me. I hate reading. All right. But think about it this way. The only time that he would be acting the part that would put him and that woman in an inappropriate situation would be in public. And I'm sure that Tim is smart enough to say, look, and before they even go into the operation, they say, look, if we have to cross a line that you feel uncomfortable about, then you throw a fit in a big scene and you just walk right out on me like a lover's quarrel. And that's the way we'll stop that part of the operation. And I'm sure that these women were given those instructions. Because, again, Tim talks about this line that they wouldn't cross. And the only way to ensure that the operation could still go on is to also protect those who are operating the sting on these predators. So again, you think about it. Tim tells the women, says, hey, it gets too far. If you start to feel uncomfortable, just throw a fit, stomp out of the building, and I'll follow after you, crying and moaning about, I'm so sorry, kind of thing. So that there's a way out. So if these women got to a point where they felt that they were being manipulated, or to a point where they felt like it was an uncomfortable situation for them, they had a way out. Did they take it? I don't know. The operation goes too well for them not to be able to have some safeguards in place that create a zone so that they can escape with their integrity to the predators and pedophiles, but also be able to come back into that operation and still have enough credibility that they can capture the most vile and ruthless and murderous and most heinous villains that you can imagine, right? There's too many things that are left out in the conversations that I've been listening to over the last couple of weeks about the Tim Ballard situation on the other channels, including Board Radio. I love those guys. Don't get me wrong. Cardinal's great. All these guys are great. But I think they miss the most important part of it all. First, the children. First, the children. First, the children. Can we help Tim? How can we help him in any way possible if he has been down a road that he should never take with the women? How can we help him? Because the work he does is more important than anything else that we can be engaged in. If anyone harms a child, it would be better that they had a millstone wrapped around their neck and thrown in the depths of the sea. Right? How many of you who are speaking against Tim Ballard because of accusations. They don't care if they're even true. All the accusations completely be true. But how many children are you harming in the process? I'd hate to think about that. Think about that millstone. You know, if it's one thing, you become complicit in the actions of those who are the most vile people in the world. Tim Ballard, he might have had some inappropriate interaction with some women who were willing volunteers to go and rescue children. Who are being molested, raped, murdered over and over and over and over again. All right. I'm reminded of a situation where the United States supported Osama bin Laden because of the war that was engaged by Russia in Afghanistan. They supported him so that he could help, fight the Russians. And eventually he turned on the United States, and I get that. But he turned on the United States to murder the people of the United States. All right? So the United States, in that war, had to eliminate a threat against humanity. Tim Ballard doesn't fit that role. Tim Ballard is hero. He stands for the children. It's not like he's going and becoming the predator or the pedophile himself. All right? He's still staying true to his first calling, and that's to find, seek, and destroy the villain, and to save the children. The children are most important. All right. And again, it's like, give Tim some support, the kind of support that he needs. Either with his work that he does for the children to protect them, or the support he needs to heal. Again, I know that many would say, well, the women were hurt. Yes, they were. They could have been hurt. They could have been traumatized. We don't know. We don't know if they're that. I know they're good actresses because they were able to convince the predators. All right. So again, who do you think about first? What do you think about first? Do you think about how we can demonize Tim Ballard for his inappropriate acts with women, if he did? Or the children that can be rescued if we lend him the support that he needs? That's the question. That's the bottom line question. So I want to read a few comments, just because I thought it was wonderful. People actually watched this video and, they supported the channel for whatever. Got a few extra subscribers. I really appreciate subscribers. And I appreciate those who watched the video. And I'd make a plea to anybody that watches this video. If you support Tim Ballard, get as many people as you can to watch this video. Share this video, like this video, subscribe to the channel. All right. But I want to make sure no matter if it's one person that watches a video or whatever that number looks like, I want to be put on record that I support Tim Ballard. All right. That's what I am making this video for. And maybe if it gets enough views, enough likes, and notoriety, maybe Tim will watch this. Maybe he'll read your comments. And it'll give him support, the support he needs to get over and beyond the and give him the strength to overcome those who attack him. So anyway, this one's from it's Davl Wallace. I would say David L. Wallace. This whole issue sounds like a hit piece. They often use sexual allegations to destroy and discredit people, exposing issues that evil people want hidden. Julian Assange was attacked for sexual charges, which were later dropped. If the perps want you badly enough, they will find something to discredit you with, even if they have to make it up. Sex sells. All right. It also brings about a embarrassment upon people. It's kind of this thing where here Jesus Christ is being asked about the resurrection by the Sadducees. And what they ask him about, which one of the seven women was going to have, which one of the seven brothers was going to have sex with the woman in the resurrection? They were asking him a question about sex in heaven to bring about a embarrassment, to embarrass him, to make him walk away from that conversation, so it would tear down his truth and his power to demonstrate that truth. But he didn't. He stood in there and he fought. And Tim Ballard is fighting. Thank you, David Wallace. Next. Kind of interesting here. This is from at G. The church leaders and Tim Ballard are both in this together. The leaders are just trying to get ahead of what's about to come out by throwing Tim under the bus and distancing themselves from him. They have to be in a panic and hope Tim exposes them. Okay, so I'm imagining, and I think I get this right. I hope I get this right. What this person is alluding to, he says, look, they're luring as many of the predators as they can out, tearing him down, making him look less important in the fight, but also opening up the door for the predators to think that Tim is no longer the hero in the eyes of the saints anymore, as he once was. Okay? So it could be. The church is very aware of predators and pedophiles out there. They're very aware of the work that he does and the good he does. So believe me, I could see that they could work together in some way. Because the church hasn't even, I mean, the church really hasn't came out themselves and said, we support that official statement that came out. There's actually been denial. If you watch the Word Radio, they played audio. There's been denial by the newsroom people that that was an official statement. Who knows? Come on, elders, apostles. Now, obviously, Russell, the president of the church. Wow, I get wrapped up and I get forgetful sometimes of names. And Russell Ballard, he's feeble. President of the church, Russell M. Nelson, he couldn't even make it to conference this week, so I could see why they couldn't come out. But there's plenty of them that stand in officiating positions that if they wanted to, they could have come out and said, okay, simple statement said, hey, this is what we said. It was declared, and we're going to step away from the situation anymore, because any more that we would say would hurt Tim Ballard's efforts to heal if he needed to be, and our efforts to take on the most vile people in the world. Right? Here's another one. This one came from at CDMBCGM. Right. I also like what Tim Ballard has done for rescuing children. However, the pattern of evidence is not looking good for Tim. When the press release came out, Tim lied about it and called it fake, when he knew about all this stuff months ago. Then there is the fact that Tim quit OUR as CEO. Why would Tim quit OUR, a company Tim started? Having sexual harassment evidence against him would force Tim to quit. No, Tim is, or OUR, is no longer rescuing children. He is fundraising and then uses that money to give to others, police, or the money is given to purchase resources to help agencies. The allegations from these women he worked with was that he was grooming women from organizations and then would come up with a situation where he could commit adultery. Other agents are saying they didn't use the couple's ruse, and more success suggesting the couple's ruse was not needed. The video lately of Tim are not showing a repentant Tim. Yes, he can repent, but he has to become humble, and I don't see a humble Tim yet, but pray he can have the courage to repent. Okay, well, I completely disagree with this person in a lot of ways. That one of the interviews Tim says is, yeah, I stepped away from OUR because it was an operation that could only work within OUR to help rescue children. He went and made another organization that resourced the donations and all the other other ways of making money within the organization, so that he could hire others to do the filthy work necessary to rescue children. Right? Again, this person completely, they do mention the great work he does for rescuing children, but they can't wait to get into how he manipulated women and all that. So again, I appreciate the comment, but I find it to be more skewed to condemning Tim than to saying, Tim, get out there and do what you got to do, but you got to rescue those children. And if I was a man or a woman with the kind of courage you have, I would be willing to put my own life on the line. I would be willing to be victimized by these predators before I'd want to see another child hurt. Okay? Let's see. There's got to be a lot more than that. Where'd they all go? Yeah, interesting. So let me go to my phone. There's a lot more comments on there. For whatever reason, it just didn't show up. All right. There was 120 comments according to what we know. And there was a lot of comments on there about my association with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and how we are wrong. And there's only one Lord, one Jesus Christ, and all that. And there was comments about Joseph Smith, of course, the polyander or the polygamist and all that. But I want to make sure we get back to some of the comments that would give support to Tim Ballard. That's the most important part. Because again, we need people like Tim Ballard to get out there and rescue the children. All right. And we can't stand as a moral judgment against those who are willing to use whatever methods possible that at their whatever power, whatever influences they can use to overcome this wretched of a filthy world that they are trying to expose. Let's see. I mean, I even had comments asking whether I'd do inappropriate things to save children. Again, I'm not in that position to speak in that way. But I know this, my children were going to be victimized, or I was going to be victimized. Guess who's going to get victimized? Right? So anyway, I'm almost there was one comment that I got that talked about laying out an idea about the Russian mafia and how they're involved in some things, and that they were dissolved, but they have come back through some of the organizations within the United States, and how corrupt that is. For some reason, it's no longer there. All right. So according to my YouTube channel, I had 120 comments. I don't know how to access them all right now. Oh, here's one. I'd like to read. This is the last one because I'm not going to scramble through all these, and I really appreciate those spent time with me this day. I tried to if there's anybody that wants to do a Zoom discussion with me on the subject at hand, or any subject, religious subject, mostly, just let me know in the comments. I love talking to people. That's why I made this YouTube channel. I didn't have enough people to talk to. And I guess most of the time I don't mind talking to myself or also. But I know my Father in heaven is listening. And he knows where my heart is. And that's more important to me than anything else. And I remind you, where's your heart? Is it to protect the children? Because you can't do both. You really can't do both. You can't protect both the children and the women who say that they were victimized. You can't protect them both. All right? It's impossible. Because if the women who were engaged in these operations did not fulfill the role that they were in, then children would not be saved. Again, I don't want anybody to be a victim, especially women. All right. It really tears at me, okay? Women. But even more than that, children. All right. Why would anybody choose to see first the inappropriate acts of Tim Ballard against these women if they happened? It's like the mote and the beam, speaking about a quote from Jesus Christ. How can a man speak about the mote in his brother's eye when he himself has a beam in his own eye? How can we speak about Tim Ballard's heroic work and make it so insignificant that it's overshadowed by accusations by 7 women? Again, I don't see how people could look in the mirror and choose anything except for the children that are being rescued. I don't know. Anyway, let me read this last one. And believe me, Tim, if you ever watch this video, or if you ever, I support you. And I'm not trying to make bank off of you or anything like that. I just want my voice to be heard within the few or thousands or whatever that looks like, so that they know that there's one person out there that cares about the work you do more than thinking about the sinful acts that you might have been engaged in. Right? There's no equivalency in that. Again, that's a war. It's a full-on war. And people are traumatized in war. There's darkness in war. This person says it here. PTSD sucks. I don't like using that word, sucks, but that's what he wrote. I've been living with it since 2007, Iraq deployment. And I only had brief reprieve from it when the Holy Spirit entered me. Tim is truly doing the Lord's work and saving these children who are victims of human trafficking. Should be the church's, which should be the church's top priority. Now I put in the which there, and I want to make sure this person gets recognized to be, cares to be. It's random on. It's RANDOMANUN. Okay, but he continues. Tim, let's see, if they suddenly take issue with Tim due to any past impropriety, I'd invite them to diligently re-examine all of the people who the Lord uses mightily. He doesn't choose perfect people from his creation. He sent a perfect being once, and we are not him. Beautiful words. Beautiful words. Thank you. Okay. So I've ran my mouth long enough. And I'm going to end it again on this. It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? The predators either know or they're looking for them. And if you want your children back that have been captured by these predators, either just by the fact that they're captured within the internet or actually physically captured, who do you want to go in there to save these children? You want somebody that's looks out for his own moral standing in society first before he thinks of the children, or somebody that thinks of the children first before they reflect on how he will look in our society. One is going to get the job done, and we know who that is, or the men like that, who they are, and we know who will not get the job done, and that's a fact. And this is the Latter-day Saint on Fire, and I'm out.